Oh, here comes a couple more people. Ah, Lee and Barb. Good to see you guys.
Hi.
Hi. Okay, here's a bunch more. So I am recording this and I'm going to send out the recording. But today's topic, because I've been doing a lot with this, is different ways to use self-concept. So let me just start. I'm going to try to not PowerPoint you to death, but okay. Let me just start this. So you guys all know the three graphs, right? The top one, self, is DNA. So those are your most natural behaviors. And that's what we use to understand a person and to match them up to jobs and to manage them with management strategy. But today we're going to talk about the second graph, which is self-concept. And I call that the trying to graph. So in this example, this person is trying to lower their dominance, lower their A drive. They're trying to be more team-oriented. They're trying to pull back their socialization, their processing out loud to be a little bit more reserved. And they're trying to be more patient because that C goes higher. And they're trying to be a little bit more detailed because the D goes higher. And really important is that it switched from A higher than D. So I'm comfortable with risk, comfortable with uncertainty, to D higher than A. I protect against risk. I'm cautious. I make slower decisions. So that's why I call that the trying to graph, because then what's observable is somewhere in between your natural behaviors and how you're really trying to adapt those. Also, I'm going to open the chat. So if anybody has questions, please feel free to use the chat box. So if you guys remember, self-concept is about adaptation and making changes. So change requires energy, and it can be easy, moderate, or difficult. So change that is on the same side of that midpoint of the little triangle, change that's on the same side is considered easy. And easy means you can sustain it for a long time. It's not a big effort. So in this example, the D changes from the lowest to a little bit higher. And the B changes from high to a little bit higher. So that's pretty easy for this person. Movements of factors from high to low or low to high are considered moderate to hard. So if there's just one thing moving, that's probably moderate. But in this example, there's two things moving to other sides of the graph. It goes from a low A to a really high A, and it goes from a low C to a high C. So I would consider that pretty hard to sustain. Changes from A higher than D or D higher than A, either way, changes, flipping those around, are the hardest changes to sustain. They take a lot of energy. I mean, imagine being a really cautious person. And now all of a sudden you've got to make decisions on the fly without having much information. And you feel like you're just winging it when you yourself feel like, I really don't want to make a mistake. I really don't want to make the wrong decision. And then there you are, and you got to do it, and you got to do it right now. Again, the adaptations that require more energy. So moderate requires more than, yeah, go ahead. Okay. Was that a question or? So more energy. Any questions so far? Okay. So let's look at how we can tell how much energy they're using. That's the M score. When we look at M, it's called the response level. It's how many words you checked for each question. You remember there's 2 questions. The first one is, how do you think others would describe you? And that goes into self-concept, because it's what you think people expect you to be like. And then how would you describe yourself? That goes into self. So in this example, somebody checked 42 words. I don't know if you can see it, that M score 42, to describe themselves. And again, I always use the analogy of a gas tank. Their gas tank holds 42 gallons. Now below in self-concept, they're having to adapt a couple things. The C goes way back, the A crosses to high, and the D goes a little lower. And they're using up about 5 gallons of gas for that behavior. And if they keep having to do that, the gas tank is going to get lower and lower. And what I usually say is, in order to fill that gas tank back up, go act like the self graph. Go be part of a team. Be by yourself for a little bit. Do something where you can slow down and really just take your time and be really certain about things. The M score at the bottom gives you an indication of how long it's going to take somebody to fill that gas tank back up. So the average M is 72. So for this person at 79, it's going to take an average amount of time. For people who have that really high M, like over 100, they can sustain behaviors for a long time when they're adapting, but it takes them a long time to recover. It might take a whole, hour drive home, and then they're at home for a while and they just need to do whatever they need to do to recover. So why does it matter? Because when someone's de-energized, when they're having to adapt too much, it can lead to burnout. And productivity goes down, and the behaviors that you're hoping for become harder and harder for that person. And as they get burned out, they may start crawling into themselves a little bit. And so you can notice that. And what I say, what to do. If self-concept, my guideline, and this is a Beth guideline, if it's 20% or more lower in self-concept versus self, that's a 911. Someone's got their resume on the street. They're starting to look. And what should you do? You need to have a conversation with that person. Use some of the tools that we have. And I'm going to go into the system and make sure you know what those are. If it's higher in self-concept, and that can happen, people can adapt and they're really loving it because they're energized by whatever they're doing. Keep it up, but pay attention. And remember, self-concept can change all the time. So we really only use it for about 2 or 3 months. And if you're concerned about somebody and you want to see if they're burning out, go ahead and administer the assessment again. That's a good reason to re-administer. Any questions? Okay, the other thing to do with self-concept is validate a job target. So I pulled out 3, there was a job, there were 3 pretty high performers. You can see the orange is the job target. So there's a situational A, either somewhat independent, somewhat team-oriented, collaborative, high B, low C, driving, and high D. And most of you on the call know that this is an altruist. That's the reference pattern for this one, altruist. If you look at everyone's self-concept, how they think they need to adapt to do their job, they all look the same. So I'm like, okay, these are high performers. They all get how they're supposed to act. And so their self-concept all matches the job target. And this is good to use for an existing job where you have people who are in that job and you can look at a recent self-concept, or if they've been in the job a long time, you can look at an older one. But we use this to validate a job target as well. Because if you're using job targets and you use the suggested ones, for example, that the system says, oh, we have for inside sales, use this inside sales one. It may or may not reflect your job. So you want to validate it using self-concept for some of the people who are in the job. Any questions on that one? So here, when you're coaching to self-concept, when you're coaching to a specific role, you use the coaching guide. That's to a specific role. When you're coaching for a person and they want tips on how to modify their behavior, how to adapt, you use the personal development chart. These are 2 different coaching tools that you can use. Now I'm going to go and show you what happens when there's multiple self-concepts. Those of you who know me know this is me. This is myself. And when I do this and I do full view, it shows me the oldest one in the system. It's going to go back to 2019. But if I hover over the date, I can see every one that I have filled out. So July 7th, 2023, I was just playing around. So this is what came up. But if I go to print the behavioral report, you know what's going to come out? And this frustrates a lot of people. This one. This is what's going to come out. Now there's a little trick. If I hover over the date and I go down to coach with self-concept, it's going to put my most recent self-concept with my original self. And the reason it does that is because we consider the first time you take the assessment to be the most valid. Because once you take it a couple times, you know how to game it. And also, you know what someone's looking for. So a lot of times that second self the second time you take it, looks just like the self concept. Because it's like, ooh, they want me to take this again. I better do it for what I'm doing in my job so that I don't get in trouble. So that's why we use the first time that you take this, but you can match it up with a new self-concept. And then I can also use my personal development chart just to help me. And believe me, I actually use this for myself all the time, especially with this. Actively seek input. That's a big one for me. I don't do it very well. So this is pretty good at self-coaching. And then as far as a coaching guide, I have myself matched up with a senior manager of industry relations. Not a very good fit. In fact, I don't fit any of it. I would probably not be very happy for very long in this job. But it does give some questions for how to adapt your behavior. Then you can go to the personal development chart and use some of those tips. Okay, enough talking to myself. Anybody have any questions? Anyone have anything to say?
I learned some things, and that's always a good thing. Like the report that pulls in the original compared to what you took today. And so there were things in here I didn't know existed. So thanks.
Thank you, Barb. And I saw some other people. I hope you guys are having a good summer. And hope the rest of it goes well. If you have any vacations, I hope you have a great time. And feel free to reach out to me at any time. I will give you back 10 minutes of your day. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Beth.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Beth.
Thanks, guys.